Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for January 5th, 2021. Just waiting while some of our viewers filter in. As always, we're excited to take your questions. Today, as always, we have Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Puckett, and our very special guest, Zach Levine from Howchoo. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Wonderful. So, for our guests, for our viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with Howchoo, can you tell us about your site?
Yeah, so Howchoo is a how-to and DIY site. There are a number of interests that you can subscribe to. For example, Raspberry Pi is an interest. So we have probably 250 or so Raspberry Pi guides. We also have a lot of programming guides. We even have some like recipes and food. We have a lot of retro gaming guides, like how to repair old systems. Yeah, we create a lot of really cool Raspberry Pi projects, like the Adventure Pi. We also have a YouTube channel. And we've been doing this, we started the site about 7 years ago. We're all software engineers, and we are very mechanically inclined, so we build some cool stuff and we teach you how to do it. And that's pretty much what Howchoo is.
I love Howchoo. I've used it for a lot of things. My son, a couple of years ago, my son and I did a major arcade project, not as cool as that one, based on a Howchoo tutorial. I really recommend folks check out the site because it's fantastic. So so now you have your Adventure Pi. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so what I really wanted to do was make a totally portable arcade cabinet that I could bring over to a friend's place, obviously like pre-COVID. I could just take on a trip with me. And so I came up with the Adventure Pi, which just is in this hard case. The challenge with doing projects like this is I can't just use any old case I have lying around. I can't use any old power supply or any old whatever, because I need to create a step-by-step. And there's a guide in the video description and a video on how to make it yourself if you want to. You have to create repeatable steps. It's always a challenge for how-to things. I can't just find things I have around the shop and smash them together because you won't be able to recreate that. So that's a huge challenge in building something like this. Now, unfortunately, I broke the HDMI cable earlier today while setting this thing up. It was already a little bit finicky, and I tried to make it less finicky, and in the process completely broke it. So I can demonstrate the screen actually plugged in with a separate cable. But it's comprised of a few primary components. Obviously, you have a screen. This one runs on 5 or 12 volts. It's really hard to find screens that run on 5 volts. It's pretty spectacular. This is made by SunFounder. They also made the RazPad, which I know Ash has reviewed and covered a couple times. And then it has a removable joystick, which is pretty novel. I mean, this was pretty much what would prevent it from being possible otherwise. And then obviously we have the Raspberry Pi 3B+. This was before RetroPie supported the Raspberry Pi 4, so this is the 3B+. This is a, I think, 30,000 milliamp hour power supply that runs both the Pi and the screen. We have some backlit buttons, a little USB controller. I 3D printed this, it's on Thingiverse, I uploaded it, this holder for the joystick that has a little bit of foam in it. And I actually created 2 versions of the Adventure Pi. This is the arcade edition. I also created one that just has a foam insert and you just stick your controllers in there. I don't have the foam block with me now, but you basically unscrew this part, remove it, and just put in the foam one. So if you just want controllers, like Bluetooth controllers or whatever, you can just have a simpler setup. So that's pretty much, Adventure Pi in a nutshell, how it works. Yeah, I can show you the screen as well if you want to ask.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So
yeah.
What types of games can that play?
So this has RetroPie installed on it. And for your listeners who aren't familiar, RetroPie is probably the most popular Raspberry Pi software library. A lot of people use the Raspberry Pi computer for video game emulation, mostly retro consoles, NES, SNES, Sega Genesis, things like that. And so RetroPie really is one of the most popular use cases. And so you can emulate any video game system that the Raspberry Pi hardware can actually emulate up to. I'm pretty sure you can even do PS1 and some PS2 now with the more powerful Raspberry Pi 4. And you can basically play arcade fighting games. I wouldn't recommend using arcade controls for like a platformer. That would be no fun, but you can play pretty much whatever you want just by installing RetroPie. Yeah, those are the kinds of games that you can play. So let me, I I have a separate HDMI cable. So let me explain very briefly why this broke. It's kind of interesting. In order to make all this fit in this case, you have to use these special ribbon cables that they use on drones. And these are called FPV cables, which is first person view. And they're used for connecting small cameras to the drone so you can fly it with first person, view headsets. And so they're very fragile and they're very thin and small. And that's how they're able to fit inside of the case here. And because they're so fragile, I kind of messed around with this one too much when I was building the thing and designing it and planning it and shooting it. And it would only work if you bent it a certain way. So I tried to fix it and I just broke one of the pins off entirely. So as it stands, the display won't work. So I'm just going to plug in like a normal HDMI cable so I can demonstrate it. And hopefully in the process not to, make things worse. So everything, the screen is actually held in with high strength Velcro. So when you remove anything like this, obviously you want to make sure you evenly apply pressure on both sides so that you don't torque the screen, or torque it rather. And then, so go ahead and unplug the broken cable and plug in the non-broken cable. And I can at least demonstrate to you what the screen looks like. This is actually a pretty nice display. Yep.
It's an IPS, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We actually, yeah, it is, and it's the viewing angles you can actually see. Like, I mean, the viewing angles for a not super expensive display are pretty fantastic. Yep. So it has RetroPie, so you can kind of I don't know if I mapped escape properly. Sometimes they aren't mapped correctly, but I can always just restart it unsafely by unplugging the Raspberry Pi. I haven't added the power button to this yet, although I totally intend to. I just haven't gotten back to it to safely shut it down. Yeah. But yeah, the display, there's very little glare. This joystick is made by an actual legitimate Japanese joystick manufacturer, so it's a really high quality one as well. Maybe Ash knows the name of it. I wrote it down here. Yes, Sanwa Denshi. So they make legit, So you could use a Pimeroni or Adafruit, some sort of, maybe the Pimeroni, one of the arcade bonnets. If you want to do this yourself, I just use the cheap USB, basically arcade controller that I found on Amazon, and cheap buttons. But if you care a lot more about the springiness and mechanical aspect, you might want to use a better.
Yeah, I have to say, having built an arcade system not as nice as that, one of the things that I learned is how important the good quality buttons are, because I must have gone through 3 or 4 sets of buttons to find ones that I really liked, and some of the ones that were the best looking were not the best feeling. Some of the light up buttons were kind of mushy. One thing, I don't know if you guys have found this. I found that when you're building an arcade system, especially if you're personally cutting the holes and it's not something that's pre-made, to get the buttons that have the nut on the bottom to screw them in, as opposed to the push-through buttons, is really critical. Because I had made my own holes, and I got a bunch of the push-through buttons, and I pushed them, and they just go, as soon as you press on them hard, if your hole's not the absolute perfect size, they'll fall through, and then that's the worst. So if you get the kind that has, so for anyone buying arcade buttons, if you get the kind that has a nut at the bottom, that's much more forgiving. You can just put it in, and then you screw in the nut, and that holds it in place. If you get the kind you just have to push through, if the hole is a micrometer bigger than it should be, and you end up playing your game very aggressively, you might push it through.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say also there aren't a whole lot of great companies that make light up buttons. So if the button lights up, it's probably not the highest quality button. I think one of the challenges here is trying to keep the cost down. When we built this guide, it's we just have to use the cheapest. We want to use a good joystick, but you got to use the cheapest buttons we could find to bring the cost down to under $300, which is I think around the cost of doing this, 200 something for this version.
No, that's a Pelican case, isn't it?
It's actually made by Nanook, which is it's one of the top Pelican competitors. What Pi do you use for this? So this is actually the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. You can also use the Raspberry Pi 4. I didn't use it at the time. but you can use any one you want. Just use the highest, the newest one you can, so it'll be the most powerful and you can play the most games.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, I think with the 4 now you can play like Nintendo 64 competently, whereas the 3 it might have been more of a challenge. So if you have a 3B plus lying around, you could certainly use it, particularly if you only care about arcade games. But if you want better, higher end games, then definitely a 4. But if you get a 4, then you definitely also want to think a little bit about cooling, whereas it looks like you're passively cooling.
Yep.
That.
Yeah, so cooling is definitely a consideration, and also your power supply, because the 4 requires more energy. I'm already pushing the limit here with the 3B plus using this. It's not about battery capacity, it's about throughput. Like how many amps can it output at one time? It's powering the screen and it's powering the Pi at the same time. So there aren't a lot of 5-volt power banks that can output a high enough amperage to handle both those things. So you might find when you go to the 4 that you want to just have a separate battery to power one and the other, maybe 2 smaller batteries. Battery installed, if so. Yes, it has a battery. Actually, I probably should have mentioned that a little more clearly. It's either a 20 or 30,000 milliamp hour battery. You can actually see the undervolt indicator has appeared, which seems to come up periodically, like I'm right at the limit. It hasn't impacted performance. So there's a large power bank in here made by Muto. And I chose this one not just because the capacity is so high, but because it can output enough amperage to handle both the screen and the Pi, right? So I probably could play this for 5 or 6 hours on one charge. It's at 85%, and I turned it on this morning, and it's been sitting here not being used, just idling. So I guess it depends what game you're playing.
What screen resolution is that?
Ooh, Ash might. Did you write the review for this on Howchoo? I don't remember.
I didn't review that one or that screen. I think
Okay.
it might be 1080p, but I might be off on that.
Yeah, I think it's 1080p.
Because I've looked at that screen before. So you said it was Sunfounder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at it.
Yeah, 1080p. That is a 1080p. That is a 1080p 13-inch screen.
So
Yeah.
one thing that I find most impressive about this that I've wanted to point out for a while is the little bit that you can hide your joystick in. And
yeah.
you said that you designed it yourself. Does that include the little screw down at the bottom that it fits into, or did you have something that you attached, or how does this screw in?
Yeah, so I'm just going to disconnect this HDMI cable for people who just joined. I broke the HDMI cable that's built into this, so I've been running this manual one just so I can show you the screen. But if I disconnect this, I can more easily show you the actual parts here. So the joystick holder, you can see there. The joystick holder is just a 3D printed little cup that I designed and printed, and it has a piece of foam in there. And actually, a couple people who didn't have 3D printers emailed and asked me to print one for them, and I was happy to do that, to help them do their project. And it's actually, the removable joystick is 3 separate pieces. There's the actual shaft and ball of the joystick, and then there's this glass bit. It's actually like some sort of dust protector, I think, to help keep the grease from getting all dirty down in there. And then there's the actual, I don't know what this is called. I'm not like an arcade professional. Yeah, so you're able to just take this and stow it in here easily, and just fits right in the foam. And then now it's flat enough to close. Hopefully your friend won't slam it while, a few people commented like, it'd be cool to put some kind of lock on there so nobody can slam it while this is open. And
Yes.
it's pretty sturdy. These hinges are like, somebody would really have to come and do it intentionally. Hasn't happened yet.
So it's waterproof?
Once it's closed, it's completely waterproof. Yep.
You tested it, haven't you?
Yes. And when I shot this video, I live in Tampa, Florida, and we have like a swampy river at the end of my street, of course, East Florida. And I took it over there, and in the video, the YouTube video for this, which you can look up on our YouTube channel, you can see me right in the intro pulling it out of the water, and then show me opening it up. And that was actually a lot of fun. Putting it in the water over and over, when you're shooting a video, like you got to do like 20 takes, just letting it float, pulling it out repeatedly. It's kind of ridiculous, but
yeah,
a lot of fun.
Wow, that's awesome.
And hence the logo. This is supposed to be, I was told that this is actually upside down or rotated wrong by somebody, but the whole point of this is like the end of the world, like last arcade cabinet you'll ever need, super durable Adventure Pi.
Well, you did build it in time It's a good year to have that handy.
That's true.
Very true. So you have a couple of other cool Howchoo projects around, don't you? You were showing us before your Furby.
Yeah, I can show you a couple. So this is there are videos for all of these. This is my Amazon Echo Furby. It looks like a normal Furby right now, except that there's a port on the back. So inside of here is a Raspberry Pi Zero W. There's a speaker P hat by Pi Maroni. I think it's called the speaker P hat, like speaker fat. And I have like an Adafruit DC motor controller or something hooked up to the Pi. And I have a small microphone. And basically, when it detects that Furby is speaking, I think that's how I did it. Yeah, then it'll actually like drive the motor. And so then I've installed Amazon's Alexa voice service on here, which I think a lot of this is deprecated now, like the software. This was a few years ago. But basically, it's a fully functional Amazon Echo that's also a Furby and talks when the Alexa talks. So there's that one. This one's from like 2016. Anybody who's a Howchoo fan might have remembered this, but this was the original Pi cart, which is I'm sure a lot of you have seen now, which is the Raspberry Pi in an NES cartridge. And we were the first ones to make this in 2016, which was really cool. And this was our first project that did like really well and inspired us to like make a whole bunch of other ones. So we have guides and videos on all of these. And Adventure Pi was also covered in the official Raspberry Pi magazine, which was cool. So that was a nice treat.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. Yep, so it's actually March of last year was when I did this thing and got it in here. And then we have a bunch. I mean, they're just we've done a lot of. We recently did. They're all just kind of off or in various states of disassembly, of course, is how it goes. But we did the one where it's like a hockey live NHL scoreboard. So while your team is playing, it'll show the score in real time. When they score, it'll show like the scoring, like a goal animation. And so that one's really cool if you like hockey. There's also an MLB version. Definitely recommend check that out. And we also just did a Bitcoin stock ticker guide where you can build your own, 3D printed housing for a stock ticker for various cryptocurrencies. And Tyler, one of the other Howchoo founders, made that.
Now, didn't he update that recently as well to include just regular stocks instead of just Bitcoin?
I think he did. We saw a lot of pull requests coming in to GitHub for people like, contributing code and then us reviewing it and releasing it. So it's actually growing a lot faster than our other repos.
Matrix displays are so fun. I mean, it's so easy just to tweak code to make it exactly what you want it to be.
Surly Dev says you should program the Furby to cheer when your team scores.
That is a great and very niche-y idea. I love it.
That's what Raspberry Pi is all about. So speaking of great use of displays, Ash, you have a really impressive thing that you've done with music and your Matrix.
Yes, and I threw it together just this morning because I knew I needed something for the podcast. So what I have put together right here behind me, it's going to show up in just a second, is a Matrix tuner. And I'm going to get out an instrument because you don't need to hear me sing. Here's my little banjo-lele, and I'm going to, on my screen, show you my terminal. There we go. Now, it's going to, behind me, show you a 5-bar, 5 bars, or 5 lines to make the bar, like music bars. I swear I used to know what things are. It's got a treble clef on it, and we're going to make some notes. Now, as it detects a note, this little guy right here is going to move to whatever note on the scale is being played. And I'm using a headset here, the microphone on it, because it's USB. So bear with me as it kind of jumps around until it hears a note. And you will be able to see on the terminal window what it's detecting as I play. All right, let's see if it'll pick it up. Not just yet. Hang tight. We're going to relaunch that. Thank you for bearing with me through this troubleshooting phase. I swear it worked earlier. I demonstrated.
Yeah, we just thought. Just playing it for us. There you go.
There we go. All right. So we're going to play an A, or it's an E, sorry, and then an A. And when it's green, that means it's in tune. And if you see the red notes, that means it's flat. If it turns yellow, that means it's sharp.
Nice.
But the mic is picking every little bit of sound in the room. It needs a little bit of tuning, pun intended. It needs a little bit of tuning to get it just right. But there's the idea. And what I really enjoyed about creating it the most is this, every time a note changes, it's actually calling an individual image that I had to create. So I had to make, one for A flat, one for A sharp, one for, etc., A being in tune for every single note. And as soon as it's just a Python script, as soon as the Python script detects that note frequency is being played, it just shows the image and it moves it in real time. So what do you guys think though? Like what are some ways that you guys would go about visually representing the pitch change for something like this?
Maybe an animation where it moves from one to the other.
Like a little bar kind of thing?
Yeah, you'll need the microphone to be more obviously like just clip to it and not picking up other stuff. And then yeah.
It definitely needs to have the mic sensitivity adjusted because you saw it hopping around.
Yeah.
I love
the piezo microphone just taped to the back of the banjo.
Just to the back of it, yeah.
Yeah, that'd work.
Yeah, definitely. But they sell those little tuning dongles that you attach when you're tuning something that has like a microphone built into it. Maybe you could like hack one of those.
Good thinking. See what it's using and take that module.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would need to turn the speaker on to the question that just popped up. If I'd have to have my speakers on for it to hear less singing, but it would probably go all over the place.
Well, I can answer Shirley Deb's question now. The image would be that GIF of the girl with her arms in the air and the flames behind her.
Now, if it were me, the matrix would break.
Oh no!
The little LEDs inside would just crack. But that's awesome. I love that you found yet another great use of LED matrices. We've talked on prior shows about doing cool LED matrix stuff. My LED matrix experimentation continues as my 64 by 64 matrix arrived in the mail last week. And my son and I tested it, and now we're gonna work on getting our platformer game to run at that 64 by 64 resolution.
The wall behind you is pretty bare. You need something.
I know. Well, that's the idea. What I am looking for, and I'm always looking for helpful ideas, is so I have two of these now, which are 64 by 32s.
What's do you know what the pitch is on that? Like the how many millimeter pitch distance?
This is a 3, I think, and the 64 one I have is a 2.5. I think this is a 3 or a 4.
This might be worth mentioning to people. Like I've heard that every time we talk about LED matrices, whatever, we get this question about what pitch is and trying to visualize the differences. So like a 64 by 32, right? That's how many LEDs there are. And then the pitch, people always ask, is the distance between the LEDs. So the panel could be like this big or this big.
Yeah, it's the pixel. It's like having a monitor, a big monitor, or a big TV with a low resolution. It's a pixel density, is how I explained it to my son.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe this is 3. This is a pretty standard one. So now I have 2 of these, and I'm thinking the Adafruit bonnet will support up to 4, and I'm thinking of getting another 2. But I have a kind of a physical question, which is how am I going to like link them up together? Not wire wise, but like physically, so they don't fall apart. So I can mount them, because I don't know how. What I would like to do is have 4 of these together and mount them on the wall behind me, and have them show something cool. So
you have a
figure not at the moment. I'm trying to figure out though, like what kind of nut or whatever I need to like maybe connect them to each other. I mean, I've seen people use extruder bars, but I just want something really simple. Maybe a frame that is the right size to put them in, or a light box, or something where I could put 4 of these together.
Duct tape.
That will never stand up on the wall. Raspberry Pi 0 or whatever, and have something really cool up there, like question show, or some kind of data visualization. I think would be really cool. But yeah, you're right. Like the more density. So I got the 4 one. Here, and significantly smaller than This one I know and it was still
Nope.
it's so much better, but then, much smaller screens, so not big thing on the wall, big thing. Good for you. I like also as I mentioned on prior broadcast, definitely skateboard knowledge because it's so much more expensive than Amazon.
Avram, your audio is really bad at the minute, mate.
Oh, sorry.
Sounds a little bit like you're underwater.
Ooh, okay. Anyway, Les, you had something you were going to show us.
I do, yes. Well, today I've been messing around with something pretty cool. It's a GPS add-on board for Raspberry Pi, which is from Pim Maroney. And it's a wonderful slideshow because I can't show you the real thing right now because it's somewhere else. So this fits into the Breakout Garden hat, which we've had on the show before. Just simply plugs in. It's an I2C device. You use the included software to just install, and away you go. And I have to say, this was a seamless install process. No issues whatsoever. It was brilliant. I've used other GPS devices in the past, USB and serial, and they've been a little bit of a pain to get working. But this one, plugged in, works straight away. Now, there is a cost to this. It's £27, which I think is about $45, $50 roughly. So it's not a cheap piece of kit. But if you need GPS, then, well, you can pay quite a lot for GPS anyway. I wanted to test it out. So I did something rather strange. Right now, outside my house, outside my letterbox, is a Raspberry Pi 4 hanging in the air by USB cable with this kit attached. And it's currently about 2 degrees C outside as well. So the Pi is getting really cool. It's great. I can overclock it. That could be an interesting story. Anyway, I've got it running a simple Python script, which I'm going to show you now. On the left of the screen, you'll see output, which shows the current latitude and longitude of where I am. Now, just so everyone knows, that is not real longitude and latitude. I have used some fake numbers in there to sort of show you output. But on the right-hand side of the screen is an actual very coarse location in Google Maps. So every second it's sending the real GPS coordinates that Pi is actually at right now to that web page. And every time I refresh it, it's going to show roughly where I am. Now, if that was to change to something like, say, Preston or Oldham or Manchester, I'd have a problem because my Pi has been stolen. But luckily, it's just showing it's in Blackpool, which is the town that I live. And I want to show how easy this is, this software. I'm just going to end this script running now. I'm going to quickly load this up. So hopefully that's pretty visible, not too sure. But what I've got are the first few lines where I'm importing libraries. So the time library to control how fast the script goes round in the loop. GMplot, which is a Google Maps plotting Python library. PA1010D is the library for this GPS unit. Random uniform is how I'm generating random numbers to hide my real GPS coordinates. And all I'm doing is I'm creating an object called GPS, which contains a link to the GPS unit. I then updates to show, well, to get the data from that unit, and then store it in 2 variables, latitude, longitude, which pulls the data out of that object. It's a dictionary, and it uses the key of latitude, longitude. It then prints out the data, so the timestamp, so what the current time is, the latitude, the longitude here, with my fake little numbers at the end to hide where I live. It gives my altitude. Now, I don't really need to fake that because I'm only about 2 meters above sea level, I think. That's fine. It shows my current speed in the world, so how fast the planet is spinning around right now. And then it plots all of this, it plots all of this onto that Google map. So it gives the latitude and longitude here. So there it is. And 10, it gives me enough of a view to see roughly where I am in the world, but not too precise. If I was to increase that to 20, it would go down to street view. It then generates an HTML map for Google Maps, waits a second, and then repeats the entire process. and that is all how it works. And I have to say, super easy to work with. Really easy and really impressed. So, like I said, it's £27, so about $45-50, but it just works. And I'm quite amazed at that. I had cheaper ones in the past, I've had more expensive ones in the past, and they haven't worked as reliable. And yes, Alex, it is outside. I tried to get a signal indoors, and it sporadically worked. There were times where I got a really clean signal and it worked, but other times, and more often than not, it wasn't very good. So yeah, this is an outdoor one.
This is great.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah, this is great, Les. I had a question. So if you, this is able to transmit because it's connected to your home Wi-Fi, correct?
Yep.
But if you wanted to actually have like a mobile unit that you go and put somewhere, you'd need some sort of cellular breakout board that has like a SIM card or something so that it can transmit data, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, you can get one of those. You can get hats and USB devices that have SIM devices inside them. In fact, I've probably got one somewhere in the big pile of stuff.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
What about a low-raw radio?
LoRa would work as well, yeah. You're limited with how much data you could send because it's quite low bandwidth. But you could send enough data, say latitude, longitude, and then altitude and speed, that sort of thing, and you'd still be within your limits for the day. Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned that you had to put it outside because of the signal. Does putting it in any kind of case seem to impact it? Like, is the actual module exposed outside, or is it housed?
It's currently exposed, so if it rains, I need to run outside quickly.
That seems like an oversight.
Possibly. You could put it in a clear case. As long as it has a line of sight to the sky, it has a good chance. Through glass, it does work. It does take longer to acquire a signal. But outside and in the great blue yonder somewhere, it should be fine. In a nice clear case. Obviously, UV protected, it doesn't degrade over time. But yeah, it could work.
Great. What kind of projects could you see doing with it?
Oh, all sorts. If you were to know the GPS coordinates of certain things around where you live, for instance, you could set up a geocache or a treasure hunt of some sort. So you can have the Pi as a handheld device with the screen leading you to the item that's on the quest. So for a bit of fun there, so you can also explore the world around you, which, given the fact that pretty much we're all locked down at the moment, would be a really neat thing to do, to enjoy the great outdoors once it's nice and warm again.
Oh, a handheld geocache finder with a screen with a tiny LED matrix with an arrow that points.
Yeah.
So when you get in close, it can like turn more red or something.
It could have an e-ink one as well, so it has a really good battery life. Because you don't need to update every, say, 10, 15 seconds. That'd be cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this has like a compass then built in too, right?
I would guess so, yeah. 'Cause it knows which direction it's in, but I haven't tested the function for compass, and I haven't seen one. So possibly we might need to get a magnetometer as well, which, if you've got Breakout Garden, you can get different hats, so different add-on boards, and just plug straight in.
Yeah. I just ordered a whole bunch of breakout garden boards that I'm expecting to come in a couple weeks. It's like the new toy that I want to play with. Surly Dev says you could have 4 friends running around town playing an in real life version of Pac-Man.
That's so silly.
Yes, that is true. So last thing I wanted to show was some of the toys that my son who was on the show last week and I have been building in the last couple of weeks. Just this is not meant to be a Pimoroni commercial, but we seem to have a lot of Pimoroni stuff.
They're good at what they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this here is the Scrollbot. It is basically just a Raspberry Pi Zero with a LED hat, but they give you this neat acrylic case, which makes it look like it's in a robot's mouth, and then you can program it to do various things. What we did initially is we set it up to use Flask. So so if you go to a web, it's not looking good here. It says Hello Piecast, or if you could see it, but we set up a Flask server where whatever the URL you feed it is what it shows on the screen. Our goal, but we haven't figured it out quite yet, is to have it show whatever people are chatting to him in Minecraft using the Minecraft JavaScript API. We just haven't figured out how to capture like other people's chats to him quite yet, and then have it send it by like Ajax over to the server, over
That's
to
a
the
cool
Blast
idea.
server to see like what his friends are saying.
Tell him
Whatever.
to send us the code when it's done, because I want to set that up.
Yeah. My son's ambition after being on our show last week now is to have a GitHub. He's
Bless his
8, by the
heart.
way.
That's great.
So the other thing that we got, which I don't have plugged in right now, is the Mood Light. This is another Pimoroni project. Similar concept. It works off of a Raspberry Pi Zero W, which it comes with, and it comes with a unicorn hat, which is their RGB hat, and then you program it to make the light up whatever color you want, which is pretty cool. Both of these are good, like short-term projects with to do with a kid. Although there is some soldering involved. We had to solder the hat on. We had to solder the pins onto the Raspberry Pi Zero. Here's something that longtime viewers will notice that we got. That's a new toy that we're playing with. This is this is not a Raspberry Pi product, I must admit. Although you could probably connect a Raspberry Pi to it in some way. This is an Adafruit mag tag. It is an e-ink screen with a Wi-Fi connectivity that you can use CircuitPython to code, and you can hang this on a wall, and you can have it show all kinds of cool things, like just like we're talking about the Matrix is showing, but much lower power, and it's e-ink, which is kind of fun. It's just like fun that even though it's off,
Yeah,
it shows
jealous.
things, right? So that was cool. And then the other project that we worked on this week, again, I'll tell you the positives and negatives of these. This is a car that we built. This is the Adept AWR car. This it has 4 motors. It comes with a camera, and you use a Raspberry Pi 4 with it, which you obviously have to bring yourself. And it drives pretty well. The UI is pretty good. The instructions were a nightmare. They had a video of somebody putting it. The instructions and the video instructions were contradictory to each other, and the person in the video, which we kept watching in slow motion, kept using her hand to like in a way that was blocking things, so you couldn't tell like, oh, did she screw that piece in or that piece? I don't know, because the hand was blocking it. Whatever. I can't tell you how many times I had to take it apart and put it back together in this process. So the end result has been pretty cool, although somehow how we have it now, whenever you move this, which is a servo to move up and down, occasionally the ribbon cable will pop out, which is of the camera, which is really hard to get back in because all the little pieces are screwed together around it. So I don't know how I feel about this. It was a rather inexpensive kit. It's like $60 on Amazon.
Who made the kit?
Who made the kit? Adept.
Oh, okay.
ADEEPT. It's all acrylic pieces, so you have to be super careful with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I really wish I had a way of like making replacement acrylic pieces for when like you're working on something and you screw too hard and it cracks, because that'll just destroy your whole project, and that's like happened to me a couple times. So I was very careful with this not to let that happen, and consequently it's but it does have a lot of neat pieces. It's got 6 RGB lights here. It comes with the align sensor and ultrasonic sensor and a camera. But you do need to, not only do you need to bring your own Raspberry Pi, but one thing that they don't really make clear on the description is you need to buy your own 18650 batteries, which not everybody has lying around. So I had to go to a site that sells 18650 batteries and get a couple of those to make it go. But the software is pretty good.
Any vape shop in your area for we'll have those, by the way. If you
Amazon has a few, but mostly for flashlights. And I was kind of like, I don't want to get one that will easily really junky and easily explode. So
cheap out on those, and they're all
yeah. So I went to this shop. I think it's called like 18650batteries.com. That specializes, and they were like $5 a battery. But yeah, it's most of these kits at least come with their own battery pack, but not this one. Anyway, I wanted to thank Zach, especially for coming on today's show. Zach, where's the best place that people can find your projects?
Oh, go to howchoo.com, and you can just see my name, Zach, there. I'm one of the top 5 or 6 people that create content there. Also, more importantly, our YouTube channel, which we're adding a lot of new content to. We took a bit of a hiatus during COVID because of a lot of other projects we're working on, but we have some really big ones coming up over the next few months. So yeah, just look on YouTube for Howchoo, HOWCHOO, and yeah, that's the best place.
Fantastic. I'm a big fan. I will be watching. Thank you to everyone who is watching and listening. As always, you can catch us here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. BST on Tuesdays. And of course, you can catch up with us on YouTube. Please hit subscribe at youtube.com/Tom'sHardware and wherever podcasts are available. See you next week.